Hi, everyone. This is Jenny Kiffmeyer bringing you some fiduciary hot topics. First off, we have the final and proposed required minimum distribution rules that the IRS released earlier this summer. These important rules will take effect January 1 of 2025. There was a lot of information included in these new rules, and I'm going to touch on just a few of the most important ones to be aware of. First off is the beneficiary 10-year rule. We have clarification that when the initial distribution participant had begun receiving their distributions, and the beneficiary rule of the 10-year rule begins distribution on an annual basis, and then deplete the account by the end of the 10th year. We also have clarification on designated Roth accounts with respect to RMDs and what's considered a hypothetical RMD in relation to that 10-year rule. Moving on, we've got some finalized fiduciary investment advice rules that were set to take effect September 23rd of 2024. However, because of two lawsuits, a joint resolution in Congress, and also a Supreme Court ruling that reversed an important doctrine called the Chevron doctrine, those regulations have been put on hold. And so what we're left with is the idea that the five-part fiduciary test will still be used to determine whether an individual is considered an investment advice fiduciary, and then the existing prohibited transaction exemptions will continue in effect. We also have the Abandoned Plans Program from the Department of Labor. They've issued an update for that allows for a bankruptcy trustee, if that person is helping a plan sponsor through a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, that trustee can also take part or take advantage of that Abandoned Plans Program through the Department of Labor. Earlier in the year, the Department of Labor asked plan sponsors to help them populate their retirement lost and found database. And so plan sponsors voluntarily offered up participant information, those participants who are considered lost or missing, where they're not able to be contacted. Plan sponsors uploaded that information via their 5500 filing for the year. The Department of Labor hopes to have the database fully functional by the end of December of this year, and will issue further guidance on how the plan sponsors can further provide information to make that database more robust. We have some more clarification on what are considered qualified disaster relief distributions for plan participants. That was issued in an IRS fact sheet number 2024-19. And finally, moving on to our litigation highlights. We had one very important case from the Supreme Court, Loper Bright v. Raimondo. In this case, overturned a long-standing 40 years precedence that the Supreme Court had set back in 1984. And this Chevron doctrine that is now reversed based on this recent ruling is going to change the way that the federal courts will interpret laws with respect to retirement plan operations, in addition to other topics. But specifically with respect to retirement plans, no longer will the federal courts look to the department agencies, so they won't look to the Department of Labor or to the Treasury Department to help them understand what was meant by the initial law. The courts are now going to have to just decide on their own how to interpret an ambiguous law that may have been written. So what this will do is it's going to affect probably a number of Department of Labor lawsuits and lawsuits against plan sponsors, not all at once. There's not going to be any rush to change things, but through the court system, there will be more of a consistent application of interpretations of the law. And in this case, it would be interpretations of ERISA with respect to retirement plans and plan sponsors. We also saw some court cases related to forfeitures. The important takeaway on these court cases is that plan sponsors should review their plan documents for language and how to use forfeitures. The rules clearly allow forfeitures to be used for paying plan administrative expenses, reducing employer contributions under the plan, and increasing benefits to other participants in the plan via additional contributions. Now, the best way to avoid any impropriety would be to include all three options in the plan document and then establish a hierarchy of usage so that there is no element of discretion left to the employer. Those court cases have pinpointed that if the employer has discretion, there could be a tendency or perhaps considered a breach of fiduciary responsibility if the employer executes or any discretion, and as flexible as you can with respect to plans forfeitures. Finally, there's been a few more litigation cases for target date funds. One of the cases was very illustrative of how to prevent or safeguard against any kind of fiduciary lawsuits. And so it's very important to make sure that the investment policy statement is crafted in a way that explicitly talks about target date funds or potentially other qualified default investment alternatives for the plan, what kind of benchmarks are going to be used, and how the decisions are going to be made. And also important to keep very accurate committee meeting minutes related to those discussions on investment selection and keep those in the plan records for safeguarding. And should there ever be an issue with being questioned about selecting a qualified default investment alternative. We have one big piece of legislation that is got bipartisan support, and we're hoping to see that come to fruition. It is related specifically to 403B plans and their ability to offer collective investment trusts. Now, Secure Act 2.0 cleared the way on the IRS side for 403Bs to offer CITs. However, there was still language present in the Security and Exchange Commission regulations that prevented that. And so this bill, it's called the Retirement Fairness for Charities and Educational Institutions Act, would clear the way for 403B plans to offer CITs just in the same way that they are offered for 401k plans. And that brings us to the end of our hot topics for this quarter.